Hi, I'm going to talk about the introduction. This study is on empirical analysis on effect of FDI and exchange rate on Malaysian exports from 1984 to 2018. The dependent variable of this study is export and the independent variable is FDI and exchange rate. Of FDI is an investment made by a firm or an individual in one country into business interests located in other country or a foreign country. There are two types of exchange rate and they are real exchange rate and nominal exchange rate. A weaker domestic currency would increase exports and this would make imports to be more expensive. Therefore, people would tend to prefer more local goods than import goods. A strong domestic currency decreases export and this would make imports even more cheaper. Exports play an important role whereby product of export is calculated in the nation gross output. Next is about research background. Based on the Autopola, the FDI rate of Nigeria and the empirical examination showed that FDI significantly contributes to export growth. According to SAGI, there is a positive correlation between FDI and the economic growth in cross countries, and regression reflected the fact that countries that are unexpected to grow attracts FDI because it yields higher returns. There is also an empirical study on the effects of FDI on Romanian exports using data from 2000 till 2009, and the outcome shown that the FDI induces exports and the economic growth. Not only that, there's also a research to study statistically significant relationship between exchange rate on exports in South Africa, and they used the data from 1994 to 2016. The outcome indicate that the UK exports to the euro at aggregate level are generally relative price inelastic, income elastic. However, the estimation of the model using long-term measure of volatility provide evidence that uncertainty of exchange rate has a significant influence on UK exports to euro countries. This is the research questions. Firstly is how does the FDI affect the Malaysian exports? Secondly is how does the exchange rate affect the Malaysian exports? Research objectives. First is analyze the effects of FDI on Malaysian exports. Secondly is analyze the effect of exchange rate on Malaysian exports. Proceed with importance of the study. For Malaysia's economy to continue to grow and develop, a better understanding of export changes is critical. The main goal is to investigate the relationship between FDI and the exchange rate against the export in Malaysia from 1984 to 2018. Previous studies have shown that foreign direct investment in the manufacturing sector, such as finance, supplies and machines, would directly increase Malaysia's exports. As the Malaysian currency Ringgit Malaysia depreciates, export will increase. This is because the weakening of Malaysian currency. Production costs will be lower in Malaysia. It is accepted that evaluating the relationship between the variables is ultimately useful for policymakers making various systematic changes in order to achieve the objective.
Hello everyone, I'm Ishan Subramaniam and my matrix number 270807. Now I'm going to continue with chapter 2, which is definition, concept and literature review. So first one is definition. So foreign direct investment defined as an investment made by a firm or individual in one country into business interests located in another country. So the next one is exchange rate. So an exchange rate among currencies is the rate at which one foreign money may be exchanged for any others. In one word, we can say that the exchange rate is the price of one currency in term of another currency. So the next one is export Malaysia. So export is a movable goods product within the boundaries of one country which are trade with another country. When we talk about Malaysia, so the Malaysia's 5 top export country is China, Singapore, United States and Hong Kong and also Japan. And electronic products and oil palm and petroleum are some of the products that Malaysia exports to other countries. So next one is concept. So foreign direct investment. The flow of FDI consists either capital obtained by investing firm from a foreign direct investors or a capital supplied to a firm by foreign direct investors. FDI comprises three main components, which is equity, capital, reinvested earnings, and intercompany debt transaction. So exchange rate. The real exchange rate refers to a comparison between the relative price of goods of two different countries. Real exchange rate is used to measure the purchasing power of a country currency comparison it to another country's currency with the assist of nominal exchange rate and the domestic and abroad price level. So the last part is literature review. So the variable that we use in this study is foreign direct investment, exchange rate, and Malaysian exports. So now I'm going to explain few of the literature review that we found. So FDI injection of quality capital by purchasing share in foreign affiliates or in reinvesting the affiliates' earnings, said Mr. Kumar in 2007 in his studies. And in 2018, Ms. Anita says in a study that the exchange rate between two currencies is the relative price of a currency between two countries, that is the price of one currency in the price of another currency. And in 2018, Mr. Ramli says in his studies that export Malaysia is giving impact to Malaysian economic growth and also future economic growth. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ashley Lynn Bennett, matrix number 269433. Today I'll be presenting Chapter 3, Methodology. Time series data has been used to conduct this study for the time period of 35 years, from 1984 right up to 2018. In this study, the variables are classified into two categories, which are dependent and independent variables. The variable which is evaluated and calculated in scientific experiment is a dependent variable, which in this case of our analysis, it is exports. And the independent variable, when changed, can cause direct changes to the dependent variable. For our study, the independent variables are foreign direct investment, FDI, and exchange rate. The data for FDI was collected from the globaleconomy.com website, while exports and exchange rate data was collected from World Data Bank, which was published by World Bank, sourced from Department of Statistics, DOSM. All variables are calculated in USD. The most popular type of linear regression analysis is the multiple linear regression. This was used in our study. As a predictive analysis, the relationship between one continuous dependent variable, exports, and two independent variables is described by multiple linear regression. In general, the least square estimators are random variables, as their values are not known before the data is observed and the estimates are measured. Ordinary least squares, OLS, estimates the parameters in a regression model.
Hi, I'm Danusha Satyamurthy, metric number 270467. I'm going to explain about the chapter 4, result and discussion. Discussion of result. ADF test is the unit root test of the stationarity. In order to create a reasonable link in between the variables, it is required to test for the stationarity of the series in the model. So to make the conclusion, we interpret that if the probability value is less than 5%, we reject the H null. So for example, as we can see here, for FDI at level, it shows a value that is more than 5%, which is 72.52%, and at first difference is less than 5%, which is 0%. So we conclude that the data series of FDI at level is non-stationary, and the data series of FDI at first difference is stationary. Same goes to other variables. Exchange rate. The data series of exchange rate at level is non-stationary. The data series of exchange rate at first difference is stationary. Export. The data series of export at level is non-stationary. The data series of export at first difference is stationary. Analysis of result. We obtain the result for descriptive analysis and multiple regression analysis from eViews. Using critical value to test individual statistical significance. Rejection rule. We reject H null if T statistic is more than 2.04. 2.04 here is the critical value for this study. So first of all for FTI, because 9.17, which is the T statistic for FTI, is more than 2.04, the critical value, we reject H null and conclude that FTI has a statistically significant effect on the export at the 5% level. Exchange rate, because 4.89, which is the T statistic for exchange rate, is more than 2.04, which is the critical value, we reject H null and conclude that exchange rate does have a statistically significant effect on the export at the 5% level. F statistic for overall significance. Rejection rule. Reject H null if F statistic is more than the critical value, which is 3.32, and also the p-value is less than 0.05. So for the F statistic, we calculate it from the multiple regression table from eViews, which is 65.11, and also the p-value, which is 0. We also obtain it from the multiple regression table from eViews. So as for the conclusion, since F statistic 65.11 is more than the critical value, which is 3.32, and also the p-value, which is 0, is less than 0.05, we reject H null. The test is statistically significant at the A% level of significance. We conclude that at least one of FDI or exchange rate, which are the independent variable, significantly affect the dependent variable, which is export. So the graph here shows the rejection rule for F statistic for overall significance. Based on the multiple regression tests conducted, all explanatory variable coefficients are statistically significant and have anticipated sign. It is proven in the F-test that FDI and exchange rate, the independent variables, significantly affect the changes in export, which is the dependent variable.
Hi everyone, I'm Nasan here, and now I will be presenting about the summary and the recommendations. To sum up, we have come to conclude that the export variable has the highest mean and median values compared to the other variables. An exchange rate variable have the lowest mean and median values. Based on the multiple regression rule, we rejected the null hypothesis and concluded that both exchange rate and FDI have a statistically significant effect on the export at the 5% level. Next, I will suggest some recommendations on how to increase the export with FDI and exchange rate. Firstly, FDI screening is one of the productive strategies that can be used to improve export. Screening helps the investor to select the best performing companies across industries in terms of the sustainability performance by setting filters to determine which companies or sectors are eligible or ineligible to be included in a specific portfolio. These criteria could be related to ESG or other factors such as corruptions, scandals, or even the compensation differences which will lead to an underperformance from a company. Investment screens help analysts to identify socially responsible investing, which will gain investor support, and this will lead to a larger number of investment. Hence, in order to ensure the increased investment flows that can stimulate export and increase export competitiveness, FDI screening is essential. Secondly, export promoting policies and specifically export pricing guidance via foreign exchange rate have a robust effect on export performance. For example, if a foreign currency is at a premium on the forward market, the forward contract with the bank will guarantee the exporter more currency than at today's exchange rate. So if the exporter gets a quote from the bank, he knows how much extra currency he is due to get when the foreign currency arrives, and he can use this information to his advantage during that negotiation. Hence, professional exporters are advised to keep their eyes on the forward market. Moreover, empirical findings recommend that the exchange within the product mix of export brought a statistically significant growth within the price elasticity of export supply. This is because the existing competitiveness of Malaysian export might induce a downward shift in the distribution of markups across all products and increase the relative market share of the better performing products. Hence, having a mix of export products can assist the firms to skew their export sales towards the better performing products in big destination market, and this can increase the performance of our country's export. Hence, as the study suggests, many measures and policies should be implemented on both FDI and exchange rate, as these both play an important role in Malaysian export. And that brings us to the end. Thank you.